The new Harry Potter show isn't only a wild risk for Warner Brothers, but a signal that the times are a-changin' for the state of culture. Are we ready for the new era? Well, we're kind of already there. Last month, Warner Brothers shocked the entertainment world with the announcement that the Harry Potter books will be adapted into a decade-long television series less than 15 years since the movies concluded. Now you might be thinking, you call that shocking? Milking IP for every cent it's worth isn't exactly avant-garde corporate strategy. Well, when you consider the mountains of cash they've invested in making the Daniel Radcliffe version the definitive transmedia interpretation of Harry Potter that defines multi-billion-dollar theme parks, gaming empires, and merchandise businesses, starting over actually seems pretty risky. Apparently 10 years of growing monthly subscriptions on HBO Max are worth compromising a successful brand empire built on a foundation of 8 really good movies. But never mind the financial justifications. Let's focus on the opportunity this presents fans to see a more detailed, more definitive version of the Potter story. As J.K. Rowling said in Deadline, the new adaptation will allow for a degree of depth and detail only afforded by a long-form television series. Now she can tell her story without pesky runtime concerns, less pressure to abridge the narrative for the sake of showtimes and ticket sales, and that's a good thing, right? Well, no, I think here JK is wrong. People are too eager to assume the limitations of telling stories in a 2-ish hour format are a liability when they are quite often strengths. I'm skeptical of the supposed wisdom that more time to tell a story results in a better one. But beyond that, I think the coming of a new Potter signals a very profound shift in the state of cinema, storytelling, and entertainment culture. Let's start with the new level of depth and detail that JK is boasting. One of the most common criticisms one hears from the prosumer class of entertainment nerds is a lack of character development. And this is a fair and often apt criticism. If you don't connect with the characters, there's little chance you'll get emotionally invested and it won't be a fulfilling experience. And so, Warner Brothers is giving the people what they want and providing more time with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. More time to see their unbreakable friendship develop, more time to witness the romance between Ron and Hermione Bud, and of course, more time to explore subplots glossed over in the films like Voldemort's backstory, House Self-Liberation, and Neville's potential path as the Chosen One. But I want to caution against the assumption that this is necessarily better. One of storytelling's most essential tools is narrative economy, which simply means abbreviating the action of the narrative. Upon initial consideration, this would seem to be a compromise that, given the longer runtime afforded by a television series, these narrative ellipses could be avoided in favor of a more comprehensive and therefore engaging scenario. However, I would argue that this is a mistake. The incredible achievements of cinema are inseparable from narrative economy. Let me give you an example. Consider Park Chan-wook's stone-cold masterpiece Oldboy contra the vastly inferior Spike Lee remake. In one scene, after over a decade in prison, our protagonist sees his best friend for the first time since his liberation. In the American version, Doucette knocks on the door, explains who he is, but isn't initially recognized. His friend then slowly connects the dots, greets him, and ushers him inside to catch up. It's a short exchange dramatized in real time. It's well performed, the actors have an opportunity to show their characters reacting to the situation, and overall it rings true to how we might expect this interaction to play out in our lives. The assumption is that the greater opportunity for real, actual time interactions like this, the more we can learn about the characters and therefore invest in them. But now compare it to the same scene in the Korean masterpiece. We see Dae-soo approach his beer-bellied friend who is voraciously slopping down instant noodles. Dae-soo simply says his friend's name.
전화.
His friend looks at him, and it immediately cuts to his friend clutching him in a teary-eyed embrace, while the still deeply damaged, revenge-obsessed Dae-soo is unable to emote. Notice how in the original Korean version, so much more emotion and information is communicated more incisively and more impactfully than in the American version. In less than 20 seconds, we get more insight into the intimacy of their friendship prior to Dae-soo's imprisonment, the degree of emotional ruin to Dae-soo's psyche, and the extent to which his friend has let himself go over the years, maybe due to the trauma of loss. Whereas in the American version that plays out in real time, all we get is that Doucette's friend is surprised to see him after so long. The point is, skillful manipulation of pacing, editing, production design, performance, and tone are much more potent storytelling tools than increased runtime, and I fear the impulse to tell a more detailed story will result in a lot more dialogue, but a lot less emotion. So let's apply this directly to the Potter films, in which there are some really sublime examples of narrative economy. In the fourth film, there's a really beautiful moment when Neville, after being reminded of his parents' torture, stands somberly next to the window. After Mad Eye ushers him into his office, the camera lingers on rain hitting an image of a melancholy woman, simulating a tear. It's a simple, not super subtle juxtaposition that communicates Neville's pain without requiring a minutes-long scene in which we see Neville cry and struggle with the image of his parents being brutalized, etc. Or consider the scene in the fifth movie when Snape teaches Harry occlumency. Harry accidentally deflects Snape's spell and enters his mind, wherein he learns that his father was Snape's bully. The whole flashback lasts about 20 seconds, and that 20 seconds completely animates all the resentment and vitriol Snape has directed at Harry for the last 5 years. The audience is hit with this new context concisely, feels the emotional sting of the revelation, and then we continue with the most important plot, which is Harry's troubled headspace as he faces the inevitability of facing Voldemort. I fear that in the upcoming TV series, this will be its own hour-long episode of Lily, Snape, James flashback, just for the sake of fulfilling a misguided completionist urge at the expense of maintaining focus on Harry's emotional journey. Just fluff for the sake of watch time for the sake of subscriptions. HBO already did this with The Last of Us Episode 7, which features an hour-long break in the main plot to detail Riley and Ellie's tragically unconsummated love. Aside from the business incentive to create more content, the series justifies this decision because the added context breathes life into Ellie's actions, specifically her decision not to give up on Joel after he gets stabbed. All I'm saying is if the fifth Harry Potter film can so effectively provide the context that animates a character's motivation in 20 seconds, then The Last of Us could certainly do the same, and likely to greater effect. Or the telling of the story of the Deathly Hallows, one of the unexpected highlights of the final installment. The visuals are magnificent, and Watson successfully recounts the story with the brevity and cadence of a real-life fairy tale. I dread the likelihood that this will also be its own hour-long episode. Now, that's not to say that every effort to shorten the story was successful. As many have rightly pointed out, the fifth movie in particular reduces crucial plot points to essentially PowerPoint montages. This is just one of likely many instances that could benefit from more in-depth exploration. Now, 10 years of content worth of exploration? I have my serious doubts. Even with all the time in the world, I don't think the first two movies need to be a second longer, never mind provide years of content. I suppose my point is that the Harry Potter films aren't just filmed entertainment of a certain length. They are formally cinema, and are largely successful because the story was cleverly adapted to take advantage of a movie's unique qualities. But in many ways, these qualities are, like the British in Dunkirk, under siege. It used to be a common wisdom that television was a writer's medium and film was a director's medium. Television required shows to be understood on a small, low-resolution screen, to be shot quickly, cheaply, and in few locations so it could be filmed in bulk. Without the privilege of a dark theater and a large screen to command people's attention to small details, or a sound-treated environment to give directors the ability to establish a tone, or heck, even the confidence that people are looking at the screen, television emphasized dialogue so that you could follow along no matter how small your screen was, and no matter if you could only hear it while doing the dishes. Now, emphasizing dialogue is great for something like The Wire, a meticulously detailed treatise on power, corruption, inequality, and race relations in an ailing American city. But for a fantasy about magic, acceptance, and friendship, this seems more like cinema's domain to me. But for a couple decades now, the line between cinema and television has been blurring. Now people's home viewing platforms are larger, emboldening showrunners to experiment with more cinematic techniques. These days we get crucial plot points communicated in tracking shots and moments of magical realism on the reg. So if television can do what movies do, what does being a movie even mean anymore? Well, unfortunately less than it ever has, and I think the new Super Mario Bros. Movie speaks to this, especially when you compare it to its much maligned predecessor from the early 90s starring John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins. Now, I'm not going to defend this movie, but I will say that it's a movie. And, more importantly, an adaptation. This was a time when the source material looked like this, so it required adaptation to bring it to the silver screen, and when the filmmakers needed to adapt it, they drew upon the aesthetic of successful movies of the era, like Escape from New York or RoboCop, because dystopian metropolises built on sound stages were something that movies could pull off. Mario was made to fit with an aesthetic unique to movies, whereas the new Mario looks pretty much like a higher resolution version of one of the Switch games. Saying this was the movie version of Mario promised more than just a 2-hour version of the story. It meant effects, it meant elaborate set pieces, it meant themes and settings that movies were good at depicting. With the Hoskins Leguizamo flick, the Mario brand had to fit the form of a movie. But these days, the movie fits the form of the brand, content curated by a marketing department. And I think that's what cinema has lost, the sense of being definitive, of being the most culturally potent storytelling medium, an aesthetic tradition so renowned that it commands the ability to make horribly misguided attempts like this. The movie theater used to be the only place to experience communal consumption of entertainment, to feel the buzz of collective effervescence with the audience, like going to church. But these days, community consumption of events happens on message boards, Discord servers, and comment sections. It used to be the most immersive medium, but now you can play Hogwarts Legacy and actually control wizards casting spells and flying on brooms. Growing up, the most flattering thing that could happen to a show, a game, or a comic was if it was turned into a movie, to give it the most prestigious storytelling treatment. But I speculate that popular opinion would crown the television series as the new definitive medium. Warner Brothers certainly thinks so, as they're betting heavily on it. Problem is, I'm not sure what TV can offer us except more time, and the virtues of more length are dubious at best. Sure, 6 seasons of The Sopranos created an unforgettable character in Tony Soprano, but is he more memorable than Michael Corleone from The Godfather, Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood, Charles Foster Kane from Citizen Kane? I don't think so. Assuming they attract the right talent, there will undoubtedly be new beauties discovered in the Harry Potter TV show, but there will also be beauties lost. Either way, I'll be excited to watch. This channel runs on donations, so if you enjoy this content and want to see more, be sure to check out my Ko-fi page by clicking the link in the description. Be sure to follow me on Twitch and to join the Discord, and as always, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Peace.